This week on Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero safely on your iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys and seed. And by xmr.to. Anonymously exchange your Monero into Bitcoin and seamlessly send Monero to any Bitcoin address. Go to xmr.to or use it right in your Cake Wallet. Cake Wallet and xmr.to are trusted and verified by the Monero community. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you.
This week on Monero Talk, we continue our 36C3 series. In this episode, I first speak with Alexandre Poltorak, aka Polto, of the Swiss Crypto Economics Assembly. Polto did a talk and ran a workshop on open source privacy preserving tools for implementing Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering regulations that financial intermediaries and individuals can use. Polto is concerned that traditional KYC and AML regulations are being applied too stringently in the cryptocurrency space, unnecessarily invading users' financial privacy and adding inefficiencies to the crypto banking sector. I also speak with Steve Jain, aka M52Go, of Bisk, the decentralized exchange that is popularly used for anonymously trading between Bitcoin and Monero. Steve explains his 36C3 talk, where he presented Bisk's new dispute resolution system that no longer relies on trusted third parties. My takeaway is that a true digital cash cryptocurrency like Monero, that is private by default, may actually be more efficiently suited for the traditional banking system than a surveillance coin like Bitcoin, where all transactions are default public. Bitcoin's transparency doesn't just erode users' privacy, but is making governments and financial intermediaries think they need to track all transactions just because they can. This is adding extra overhead to their traditional AML process. Whereas because Monero is default private, users will transact in private and only provide financial intermediaries and governments a view of their transactions when it is necessary. Surveillance coins don't just invade privacy, they make for a less efficient financial system. Monero Talk starts now. All right, Polto, thanks for coming on, man. I know you gave a talk, well, I guess it was just an intro talk on KYC and AML, creating KYC AML tools for crypto. And then I think you were, running something over there where you guys were trying to brainstorm and come up with ideas for? What exactly was going on over there with this?
So to a bit analyze the current state, what do we have as tools or services available today? Why we think they're not sustainable for the ecosystem and in long term, and to come up with some probably better tools. So combine existing tools and analyze what have to be developed.
Why are you focusing on this? What made you focus on this problem?
So I work at a financial intermediary in Switzerland, at a company doing crypto to fiat to crypto brokerage. And we regularly face, not as a company with our clients, but like when I go to some crypto conferences, there are some AML people trying to sell me something that I think I don't really need. They say they try to sell me their vision of their interpretations of the law, and I don't agree with this interpretation basically. So I think that what they are trying to sell today is not needed, is not efficient, is not answering to the problem, and it's destructive for the crypto economy. So I like our community to work on free software tools that enable people to selectively disclose their proofs if they want to, but not to have these extremely invasive techniques like we see today.
Okay. So the basic idea is you think that the regulations are either too stringent or kind of being misinterpreted
I think,
and being
yeah,
applied too stringently unnecessarily. Is that
exactly.
okay?
I think the regulation is not yet, at least, differentiating too much. At least in Switzerland, for example, the financial monitoring try really hard to apply a technically neutral approach, meaning that they treat fiat money, electronic money, digital money, cryptocurrency money as money, the same way, and the same law should apply.
So how do you see this then working in the real world? So let's say I don't know, in the U.S. a lot of people use Coinbase, right? So you want to create a Coinbase account, you have to give them your driver's license or your passport, some form of ID, other things to prove that you are who you say you are. So you're looking to essentially create tools that would allow you to prove who you are without giving up all that information, essentially.
Okay, so this is one big part, the KYC, know your customer. The other big part is AML, anti-money laundering. And obviously you need to first do the first KYC. You have to know who you are talking with to be able to do the AML part. But here at the workshop, we mainly concentrated on the AML software, on the crypto AML software, to prove the origin of funds. How do you do that? What's required in order to prove your origin of funds? So once you already pass the KYC, for some large amount, we usually ask you, like, can you tell me the story? Where does it come from? And can you prove me now this story? So this is what we actually discussed.
Oh,
today.
okay. I got it now. So you weren't focusing on the KYC part, but the AML part.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what can you describe further what the current problem then is with the AML part? So there's too much invasiveness there where exchanges are asking people where funds are going. Could you describe that a little more?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are two main problems here. First problem is that the banking system, the traditional financial system, is a closed network. So transactions you do on this closed network, the other people, they don't see them by default. They only see it if you decide to disclose to them for some particular reason. You want to work with this financial intermediary, with this exchange. They ask you for some proof of origin of funds, and you show them your bank extract. So here you had a closed network, and you provided a proof selectively to to the company you want to work with. In cryptocurrencies, in Bitcoin especially, everything, or Ethereum, everything is transparent. So there are potential solutions today for this, like using mixers, but this immediately raised red flags during AML. So this is one type of problem, that the network is basically transparent. The other big problem is that proofs are kind of self-generated. So in the traditional finance, when I'm asking you to prove something, I expect you to show me some extract of the bank with the very official logo of the bank on the top, their header, and ideally some signature of the person working in the bank, even if I never saw his signature, like how it looks like. But there is some trust built around this kind of proofs provided by organizations, by established organizations with a history. So if a bank would have too many false proofs, it would become known and they would be sanctioned, someone would go to prison, etc., etc. In the cryptocurrency world, these proofs are generated by, it's like, be your own bank, so be your own compliance. So when we ask, for example, a client to prove us something on the cryptocurrency side, he is producing the proof. And for people from the traditional finance, this is very strange. They would prefer some company with a reputation they would prefer to ask them, can you tell me if it's clean? And they tell, yeah, that's super clean, or this is like 70%, or this went through a mixer, it's super dark, or something like that. So these are, for me, the main problems that I see today. And the response for now, the technological response that I see for now, is a completely invasive chain analysis type of approach. And I would like to see some tools that empower people to disclose whatever they are willing to disclose, but still preserving the privacy to the rest of the world. So maybe some easy examples of, really easy examples of AML that we can say is like someone saying that, okay, I would like to sell 100 bitcoins, and the origin of funds is that I am a miner. So we would ask him to provide a cryptographic signature of a specific message that we ask him to sign with the private key of the address where he have the rewards. And then our compliance can use tools like blockchain explorers, for example, to see where these rewards really came from, if it's really a reward from a pool or from mining activity, or if it doesn't match. And then we would continue to ask questions until we reach some plausible understanding of his origin of funds. And by the way, in cryptocurrencies, as you see, you present cryptographic proofs. So it's kind of white or black. And in the traditional finance, you are presenting PDFs or some scans with manual signatures of people that I never saw. So I can even not verify the signature.
So with Monero, with it being the blockchain being obscured and not being transparent, so it kind of has those tools built into it then, right? Because you're not worried about there being the over-regulation or the over-scanning of the blockchain to see where because they can't. And then the onus is more on the user to then just opt in and show certain things, right? Using the view key. Is that one way of looking at it?
That's, I think, a good way to look at it. But there is not such a thing as 100% secure in cryptography. So things are I think it's a game where we are trying to the companies like Chain Analysis are trying to catch up with new obfuscation techniques. So the community is also moving on, and with this technique being developed, there is incentive to develop new technologies for privacy. So I think it's a very fastly moving topic, and I think full anonymity does not exist. Now it's clear Monero is much better for this. And again, Monero still allows you to selectively prove when you want to do business with someone. You can selectively disclose some proofs.
So do you see that being the ideal way these things should work?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So to give you an easy example where our compliance should probably accept a transaction and someone using externalized API-based blockchain analysis would just refuse immediately the transaction. The client comes to us and we see that, let's say, 3 hops behind it was, on Bitcoin, that it was a Bitcoin mixer, yeah, or he used some weird coin join or whatever. So an API would immediately raise a red flag saying that this is super weird and looks strange. And because the financial intermediary is externalizing the process, they don't even try to communicate with the customer and ask him questions. We would just add an additional question. We would say, okay, we see that you went through a mixer. Can you prove us the input and outputs? Usually you have a signature from the mixer, so you can perfectly prove. And we can continue our work of digging down to the origin of funds by asking questions to our client, and the client presenting us with proofs. So it can be done with Monero, and like the situation that I described with the mixer, it's basically similar to what happened in Monero.
Mm-hmm.
Like probably many financial intermediaries who do not understand what's a view key, they would just simply say, oh, it's Monero, it's completely anonymous, we can do nothing about it.
Right. So what I'm hearing for you is, financial institutions might potentially be more interested in using Monero once they actually understand it, because it would allow them to do things in accordance with the regulations without doing extra work. So it's like in Bitcoin, because they have the ability to analyze the chain, they feel like they need to, and they put in that extra effort and they hire the chain analysis companies. But where in Monero, because that option doesn't even exist, it should be understood that they don't have to do it. And essentially all they have to do is ask customers for their view keys.
Excellent point. I never thought about this in this way, but yeah, I think it's a good argument. And actually, if it's well explained, probably the financial institutions should jump into privacy coins precisely for this reason. Because now, like everyone is very enthusiastic. Now there is a new law in Germany allowing banks to do custody and trading of cryptocurrencies for their customers. So everyone is kind of trying to do something, but then they see the costs of the AML, of these appliances and stuff. It's a huge overhead that they never had in the traditional finance world. So I think it's a good argument to go for privacy coins. I think also it's a good argument for governments because, for example, on every paper bill we have a serial number on the fiat, but somehow the governments decided that it would not be something good for our societies and for economies to track it down to like each individual transaction. Mm-hmm. And you can see that, okay, some governments like India try to demonetize. Some governments like Switzerland maintain a high level of paper liquidity. I mean, like, how do you call it? Like proper fiat, not electronic money. I mean, to allow some part of the economy to function without like complete monitoring because it's extremely destructive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in cash, you go to the bank, you take out your cash. They know how much you took out, but they don't know what you did after that. And you're saying is theoretically they could know more if they wanted to put in an extreme amount of effort to figure it out, but they don't.
Just imagine how easy it is today to put a visual sensor reading a code bar or a serial number on a bill into any cashing machine and to force this by law.
Right.
Somehow they are intelligent enough not to do this.
Right.
So I think that if they would properly understand that it's not only about privacy enforced by cryptography, it's about privacy enforced by cryptography, and the same cryptography can perfectly help you to de-anonymize you selectively and proving, but cryptographically proving. So not like a PDF, as I told before, that could be perfectly modified, photoshopped or whatever, but a cryptographic proof.
So do you think there's just currently then there's a disconnect, there's just a lack of education and understanding? Because it's kind of like we see the opposite, right? We see exchanges not wanting to, or at least that's the FUD you hear, that they don't want to deal with privacy coins. Even on like something like Coinbase, we have never seen them add Monero. but from the discussion we're having today, they should almost be more enthusiastic to move towards these things because it could potentially mean less work and overhead for them in dealing with these currencies. So do you think it's just a temporary disconnect that will change with time?
I don't know if it's temporary in the sense that different governments, and I'm not saying countries, governments of these countries, so it may change over time, but the different governments, they are applying different policies for or against crypto, and like as a whole, and in particular to the privacy coins. Then I think we need maybe some decennies of understanding the properties of what these cryptographic proofs are proving, and it should go down to the compliance. So it's not cryptographers who should understand; it's the compliance who should trust some code that they're executing and should have some quite good understanding of what it is actually proving.
So will you be working on things like Monero as well, or you're just more focused on Bitcoin and building the AML tools for cryptographically proving ownerships of Bitcoin?
So my personal experience in Monero for now is quite low. I did some tests, but I'm not using it every day, unfortunately. At the company where I'm working, we just added Monero to our BTM machines some months, almost a year ago, but it's still not on our platform. By the way, our crypto ATM machines are fully anonymous, so no KYC in there, and it's perfectly legal in Switzerland. It's limited to 5,000 Swiss francs per transaction. On the web platform and the API, we are still working on adding Monero. So for now, we don't have many cases with origin of funds proved on Monero. But even to buy some Bitcoin, sometimes we had customers paying, not paying, but showing their origin of funds that went through Monero. So we had to learn and to develop this knowledge internally. But it's not yet as rock solid and automated, and we still lack a lot of tools for doing this. And on the tooling, there are tools that we will use as the compliance service on our side in the company, but there are also tools that the client have to use in order to produce the proof. And here there are also a lot of development and a lot of education to do. Just to give you an example, not all Bitcoin wallets can sign a message, an arbitrary message. They can all sign a transaction, but not a message. Not all Bitcoin wallets can extract extended public keys and properly tell to the user what this means. So in the Monero ecosystem, I don't know how easy it is to extract your view key on every wallet, for example. And to properly tell the user what, warn the user what what others could do with this. So these are the two main parts of software that we need, and a lot of education. And so my idea with this small talk here at CCC, because AML is not the kind of funny stuff to talk, especially here at the community. I can hear a lot, and I don't want to talk about this in standard crypto conferences, but especially here at CCC, it's a bit strange to talk about AML. So the reason why I did it is because I really see emergency in creating some free software tool that empower the users, and instead of doing some weird invasive surveillance, basically just disallowing them to do financial transactions, to access to the financial system. So I'm really thinking about creating an association in Switzerland, a legal non-profit entity to aggregate and promote this kind of software, so that the financial intermediaries see some legal body presenting some alternative option. Because for now it's really mostly chain analysis tools that do not ask any single question from the client trying to transact.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, it seems like something that's you're headed in the right direction. I mean, to just say, let's not worry about KYC AML. This stuff's supposed to be for cypherpunks and crypto anarchists. Is great. It's great in theory, and that's the direction we're all ultimately headed in. But in the interim, we have to, before we get to that stage, we have to work with the current system, and this allows us to bridge with the current system in a way that's at least more aligned with those ideals. So if we're going to have to interact with the current system, at least we could do it in a way where you're not losing as much information. Because the mere fact is, if you want everybody to start using Bitcoin or Monero, they're going to have to get into it from the fiat world somehow.
Even I have some customers who are like early crypto investors, and we only have quite conservative customers, so it's mainly Bitcoin, sometimes Ethereum, Monero, but it stays in there. But they're starting to ask questions like, how, when I will give these coins to my children, how they will be able to use it if it really becomes valued 10 times more than now. So he invested back in, let's say, in 2014. Now he accumulated some amount of Bitcoins, and let's hope it will be some millions or dozens of millions when his children inherit of this. So already just the inheritance problem is a separate problem. It has to be also legally handled in order to be considered as an inheritance and not just stolen or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they start to ask how my children will be able to buy a house with this money. Because in the real world, like the company selling the house, they will do KYC and AML. Mm-hmm. So they start to explain their last years of trading and investment and to document this precisely so that it would be available for their children then they need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
or you just have to buy a house from a crypto anarchist, I guess, is the only way to.
Yeah. But we are not here yet. I mean, you would be very restricted in your choices of house. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for explaining it all. Where can people learn more about you, the project you're working on? We didn't talk about the Swiss Crypto Economic Assembly, right? That's also is that part of this, or that's?
Yes, yeah. So I did this workshop as part of this assembly. So in a few words, this assembly is a kind of it's a lot of different groups from French-speaking Switzerland mainly, but also a bit all over the Europe, our friends, but who have legal entities usually in Switzerland. So it's a lot of different projects in the crypto space, mainly on Bitcoin and Ethereum in those two ecosystems. Some are we had some independent group of developers like Dan and how was it? Hashed, who presented the Bitcoin Monero atomic swap. We have DAppNode, decentralized infrastructure for self-hosted decentralized infrastructure for peer-to-peer and crypto networks. We had NEEM, Mixnet. We had Alephium, Sharded Blockchain, many other groups. In fact, I cannot remember them all now. But yeah, so Swiss Crypto Economics is this group of different people coming from Switzerland and involved in this sector.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. I'll hit you up later. We'll try to get some links maybe that we could add to the show notes.
Sure.
We'll add your previous talk to the show notes so people could learn more about these things. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Polto. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Steve Jain, thanks for coming on. Steve Jain of the Bisq project. Can you hear me, Steve?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
So you just did a talk at the conference on the Bisq project. Hold on, what am I getting here? Oh, I think we're good. So what was the essence of your talk there?
So the topic of the talk was this new dispute resolution mechanism. Essentially, about 2 months ago in Bisq version 1.2, we introduced a dispute resolution mechanism that was centered around a 2 of 2 multi-sig arrangement as opposed to the 2 of 3 that it was before. And it basically results in a more decentralized mechanism where you need less trust. Before you had to trust an anonymous third party. Now the mechanism is a bit different, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah, so how did Bisq end up evolving into using that method?
Yeah, so it was, I guess, a long-term goal, but it required a bit of work to make that happen. In particular, the Bisq DAO had to be launched because the DAO is a critical part of the third step in the process. So the first step was trader chat. This was something that we didn't have before to allow people to directly chat with each other in case of any small issues. And the second and third step, mediation and what do we call it? Refund agent are new, and that's centered around the idea of a 2 of 2 multi-sig. So like you mentioned before, it was 2 of 3, and you'd have third key held by a trusted arbitrator. Now with 2 of 2, that third key is no longer there, and it's just the 2 trading parties who have keys to free those funds. And so the second step, mediation, takes place when chat does not work. And what a mediator will do is look at the situation and then make a suggestion as to how they think the payout should be made. Looking at the rules of trading on Bisq and looking at the exact particular details of the trade, they'll make a suggestion, and the traders are then free to accept or reject that suggestion. If both traders agree with the suggestion, then the dispute is closed, payout is made, and trade is completed. If not, a refund agent is then involved. They take another look at the details, and if they think that the trader deserves the funds, if they're basically if they're honest and innocent, then the refund agent will pay the trader out of their own pocket with Bitcoin to make them whole, and then request compensation for that payment from the Bisq DAO. And so there's a bit of a process that goes on behind the scenes, but that's essentially what happens. The funds from the 2 of 2 are sent beforehand to the DAO, and then the DAO pays the refund agent back.
Why? But I guess my question is, why did Bisq move to this approach? What was the issue with the previous approach?
Sure. So the issue was, I guess you could say it was twofold. One was that you were trusting, as a user, you were trusting that this anonymous person would handle your case fairly and justly. So you kind of, you missed out on having absolute control over your funds if a dispute arose. And second, for the Bisq network, there was a bit of a gray area in terms of liability legally, because for a split second, for some indeterminate amount of time, the network had some amount of influence over the funds held for trading. And so in this new mechanism, that never happens. No one in the Bisq network ever has control over the funds that are being deposited for trades. And for the first problem, traders never have to trust that some anonymous person has control over their funds either. So it's better, I think, on both sides.
Okay, that makes sense. So if there is a dispute, the goal is or that the individuals involved will resolve it themselves, and then if they can't, they turn to the DAO, and the DAO essentially decides whether or not a refund is given. Is that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the refund. So we wanted to avoid users from having to use the DAO themselves. There was initially under discussion the ability for a user to just ask the DAO for a refund directly. But we realized that most users aren't going to want to take on the complexity of understanding what that's all about and how it works. So that's where the refund agent came into play. The refund agent is basically a liaison. Like they'll do the refund and just make the user whole and get them going on their way, and then handle the DAO complexity on their own to get reimbursed for that expense. Okay,
so the DAO reimburses the refund.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it's an extra step, but I think a necessary one for ease of use in UX.
Okay, so is the refunder taking a risk there, or?
They are, and they are taking a risk that, number one, that they're not paid back by the DAO for whatever reason. The DAO thinks that this refund was not warranted. And they're also taking on a slight liquidity risk because the DAO pays out in BSQ, but the refunder paid out in BTC. So when the refunder is paid back in BSQ, they're going to have to sell that BSQ back for BTC. And in the interim, there could be some, liquidity changes in price such that the person doesn't get back 100% of what they paid. So they are compensated for their efforts to do this.
Okay, so the incentive of the refunder is that they're compensated for taking this risk and the work that they're doing.
Yes, which is why the network is thus incentivized to minimize the number of these cases to almost nothing. We don't want more than, I think I said in the presentation, about 1% of all trades to ever have to do this, because this is an expensive element of dispute resolution for the network.
So are these disputes taking place? Have we seen them taking place at that rate of 1%?
So this whole mechanism was launched about 2 months ago. So it's very new. And we expected that we were not going to hit that 1% off the bat. So the percentage so far has been a bit higher. Part of it was the upgrade itself caused a couple of problems. We asked that users not upgrade if they had open disputes and open trades, but still some users did that. So there were some issues there. Then there were some bugs that are now somewhat resolved. Some are resolved, some remain. So to answer your question, no, we're not at 1%, but we weren't too far beyond that, and we hope to get that down over time.
And so the new dispute resolution method is working. Like you've had disputes that you've successfully carried through.
Yeah, we've had mediation cases and we've had a handful of arbitration cases, and they've worked as intended.
Now, when you say that the DAO is essentially then making the decision whether or not to reimburse the refunder, how is that taking place? When we say the DAO, who is in the DAO and how is that decision being made?
Yeah, so the DAO is kind of it's probably not the greatest term in that it's not. So it stands for decentralized autonomous organization. It's not automated, really. It's a bunch of people making proposals and deciding on proposals themselves, like humans actually evaluating a GitHub proposal, evaluating a compensation request, evaluating a reimbursement request, and then making a decision in their brain as to whether or not this is a proposal that should be approved or not. Basically, it's a part of the software. Anybody can participate in it. It's not limited to anybody in particular, whereby governance and funding for the Bisq network are decided through the proposal sort of dynamic that I just described. And so when it comes to reimbursement, the reimbursement agent will make a proposal, just like anybody can make a proposal to change any aspect of Bisq. And when the voting time comes, which is every month, the DAO runs on a monthly cycle schedule. At the end of the cycle, voting takes place. Contributors and users can go through all the proposals that were made during the cycle and decide whether or not it should be approved or rejected.
So then what's their incentive to participate in the DAO and to make these decisions?
I think it's a matter of how invested you are in the project. If you are a regular contributor, you're going to want to make sure that the DAO doesn't over issue BSQ, so that your holding your stake is not inflated away. If you're a trader, you want to make sure that there are no proposals that are made that jeopardize the use of the software for trading. Trading fees is an obvious one, kind of a common one that we see as the Bitcoin price fluctuates. Fees also need to fluctuate so that they stay fair. And so we've had a couple of times now over the past 8 months that the DAO has been live that we've had to change fees, and traders had feelings about that, and they made them aware and they voted accordingly.
What kind of stats are we seeing on Bisq? So in terms of how many people are actively in the DAO and participating in it, and then just the exchange itself, what type of volume and participation are we seeing in the exchange?
So we are seeing about 25, ballparking here, about 25 proposals made every cycle, every month. Most of these are compensation requests from developers and other people who've contributed, who are requesting compensation for their work. The balance of proposals are usually like proposals to change fees. We had a proposal to integrate Monero as a base wallet. That was another one. We've had other proposals as well. We're seeing about, this fluctuates, but we're seeing about 400, I would say 200 to 400 votes per cycle. This is votes per proposal. So when you cast a vote in the DAO, you're casting one ballot with all the votes for that cycle. So in terms of number of votes, we're seeing between 200 to 400 votes. And yeah, I think we're in our 9th cycle right now for the DAO. In terms of trading, trading has fluctuated a lot. We saw earlier this year, we saw between 2,000 to 3,000 Bitcoin being traded in a month. Now we're probably around 200 to 400 Bitcoin. Dropped quite a bit. We've fluctuated quite a bit.
What do you think okay. What do you think the drop was from, or why there was so much trading happening earlier?
It's hard to tell. I mean, the volume lost was mostly Monero volume. I can tell you that. I can't tell you why. I don't know exactly what the reasons behind that were, but that's basically what it was. Our fiat volume is relatively constant in the 45 to 50 Bitcoin volume 50 Bitcoin per month. Monero is what really caused that spike in both ways. We've seen it go up and down suddenly in the past for quite quickly.
Do you suspect the Monero users will come back to Bisq and start using it for trading, or?
I hope so. I think I mentioned there was a Monero proposal a while back for integrating Monero wallet. I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding, in my perspective, for why that proposal was rejected. There are two reasons. So first of all, at the moment, this contribution resources in terms of developers are not very high. There isn't too much resources just to keep up the network as it is. The Monero proposal required, I believe, an additional dependency that would have had to be audited very carefully, as well as a number of other significant changes in the way the software worked that also would have had to be audited, and the resources were not really available for that. And secondly, and this is really more systemic. I was talking to Diego about this just a few minutes ago. Monero's wallet integration proposal was not the only significant proposal that's been declined. This is more of a systemic, organizational governance issue with Bisq overall right now. There just isn't a way to handle big changes to the software right now. We had a proposal for an HTTP API. We also had a proposal for an Android app. And both of those, the Android one was accepted, but only after the guy offered to front the whole cost for the whole project. But the HTTP API was also rejected because of resources and also because there just wasn't a well-defined way to handle a big change that would have to take place over time. And that's something we're kind of working on right now. Like, okay, we have the day-to-day compensation and like little changes here and there for like fees. The DAO can handle those fine. But when it comes to bigger issues that need to take place over time that are not so clear how they're implemented, we need a better way to handle them. And we're working on that. And hopefully at some point in the future, perhaps near to mid future, we'll have a better idea of how things like the Monero integration and API and other apps and stuff can be better handled.
What do you see as being the future for Bisq? Do you think it will become more popular? Do you think it will things like decentralized exchanges will start to eat into the exchange market overall and start to take over the exchange marketplace? What do you kind of see as being the future of exchanging crypto?
I think the future points to something like this being bigger, but I think that it's not going to happen on its own. I think that you can see with the way Monero is being delisted, privacy in general, with the way KYC and AML practices are being required more and more stringent ways. People are looking for alternatives, and I think Bisq offers that. But it's not easy to use Bisq. I acknowledge that. I think a lot of people do in the project and outside the project, of course. And it's also not easy to find out about this either. I think our growth efforts so far across the project have not been as smart and as effective as they need to be to attract a broader user base. And then within the software, within the whole funnel from finding out about the software to learning about it to using it, that whole flow needs to be made better as well. So to answer your question, I think Bisq has potential, has a lot of potential given the market conditions and what users want. But I think the project needs to and is working on ways to better spread the word and better handle new users to become productive quickly.
Do you see Bisq potentially being integrated into other things to make it more user friendly? I don't know if it's possible or feasible, but for example, being integrated into like wallets, is that something that's potentially?
It's totally potential. I think we need an API first to make that work. There's a lot of really cool things that I think can be enabled. A lot of cool integrations, a lot of just liquidity in general. You can have an API to handle making offers, taking offers, and that whole flow. There's a lot that's possible. So I think it's totally possible, and I look forward to the time that we have an API for that kind of stuff to happen.
All right. How did you get involved in Bisq?
I saw a tweet asking for help with documentation. And so I responded and did the documentation that was needed at the time, and then just kind of kept on doing more and more over time.
Are you also a Monero enthusiast, or what's your crypto of choice?
So Bitcoin is kind of what I've stuck to, but I've been learning a lot about Monero lately, and I respect it a lot. I've always been a big privacy guy, so the concept of ring signatures and just everything I've seen from the Monero community is very, very attractive to me. So I have a big respect for it.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate you coming on, taking your time to do the interview. And I think are you doing another talk tomorrow?
Yeah. So I'm having another talk tomorrow I think it's for the About Freedom Assembly, and it's going to be about the Bisq DAO in general, what it is and how it works.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This week on Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero safely on your iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys and seed. And by xmr.to, anonymously exchange your Monero into Bitcoin, and seamlessly send Monero to any Bitcoin address. Go to xmr.to or use it right in your Cake wallet. Cake Wallet and xmr.to are trusted and verified by the Monero community. Monero Talk is also made possible through contributions by viewers and listeners like you.